and we'll figure out what that means here in just a second as we go through it. My name is Jason Reese. I'm an associate professor of marketing in the Nelson Ritchie College of Business. My primary area of teaching and research is services, but more specifically sports marketing. So that's kind of my background. But you don't really care about who I am because I'm not the one that's going to be talking today. I'm going to be asking the questions as we go through this. Our session today is 60 minutes long, but most of it we'll be asking questions of the panel. The last 10 minutes or so we'll have a Q&A session. But I say all that, please interrupt us. Tell us if you have a question, if something is mentioned, please raise your hand and interrupt us. We're going to make it pretty informal. This group's going to be a fun panel, I can already tell. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a second. Before we do that, I'd like to, not you introduce yourselves, but we kind of want to know who's in the room. So I guess shout out, yell out, whatever. What type of businesses do we have in the room? What type of organizations? Nonprofits, boutiques, what do we have?
Nonprofit, chamber of commerce.
Okay. How many people nonprofit organizations? Chambers or anything like that? Okay. What else do we have in the room?
Canon Solutions, we do copiers and software, that type of thing.
Anybody else in that category or close to it?
Goods.
Yeah, any goods,
sold.
boutiques, goods sold.
SFA. We're all just
SFA, yeah. Okay.
Health and life insurance.
Okay, cool. We want kind of know so we can tailor what we're talking about to those.
Physical therapy and mental sandwich.
All right.
Personal training.
Well, my husband and I do recycling, and then we're also, well, it's not good, but we are both, I love that word.
Wealth management and investing.
Okay. All right, well, we'll get into it. I guess the first question is, who are you guys? So tell us about yourselves, your organizations, and kind of what you do.
Hi, I am Amy Mahaffey, and I work at the city of Nacogdoches, and I am our communications director and our Main Street director. So I get to wear two hats, and some days it's a lot more hats than that, depending on what's going on. And so I'm super excited to be here with y'all today. I used to work for a state agency at Texas A&M with AgriLife Extension and working with the 4-H organization. And so I've planned events for them, and I've transitioned here at the city of Nacogdoches, planning events downtown and doing what I would call marketing and public relations for the city of Nacogdoches. And so I'm just excited to see y'all.
I'm Carly Allen. I'm the Sales, Marketing, and Guest Relations Manager for Splash Kingdom Water Park here in Nacogdoches. A little bit about me: after I graduated from SFA with a hospitality degree in 2014, Actionable. And so after that, I worked as a manager at Shelley's Bakery Cafe downtown, and I did a lot of their social media. So I've kind of been on that side of it, like a small business. And then after Shelley's sold and everything, I went to work in Amy's office as a Main Street communications assistant. So I've kind of done that too. And then about a year ago, I went to Splash Kingdom to do that. And I'm also working on my master's at SFA in human sciences. And my thesis is over social media use at Convention and Visitors Bureau. So kind of a little bit of a wider realm of using social media.
And my name is Rachel Skoranek. I also am an SFA graduate. Carly stole my accent, Jack, so I'll do it again. I was also in the hospitality program, and I did my internship while I was in college through Nacogdoches Main Street, and then went on to the city of Marshall, where I've been our tourism, communications, and promotions manager. I'm now Main Street manager. Wonderland of Lights also falls under my department, which hopefully some of y'all in the East Texas area are familiar with. This will be the 33rd year, but it's a 45-day Christmas festival that brings in, thousands of visitors every year. So that's just one of the big events that we do that a lot of these things are held.
All right. Well, I guess let me give you a quick introduction to our topic. It says finding your tribe. What does that mean? Well, there's kind of a shift in how we look at what's actually termed tribe marketing. One of those trends in marketing where we're if you look historically, tribes work together to try to survive. And what we're looking at here is not just about survival, but more of we work together around social interest. And so tribe marketing really talks about building brand ambassadors this idea of people who are loyal to your brand. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the social connections that we have within marketing, but also how that leads to what people say about your brand and how businesses can kind of build upon that. So I guess the first question for the panelists in any order is, what does this all mean to you? What is marketing for your organization? How does this idea of social ties and trends play into what you do?
So I can start. The city of Nacogdoches, we sat in on the first session and you heard Crystal McWilliams talk about defining the target audience and making sure you knew who you were speaking to. We have a slightly different challenge at the city because we kind of provide services to all people in all walks of life. And so it's like goes against everything you learn that you have to define your audience when you do have to be everything to everybody. And so we tend to do what I would call repurposing content, and you'll hear us talk a little bit about, picking one thing and doing it really well. And so we'll expand on that in a little bit, but for us, that means we tell the same story over and over in a different way on different platforms. And it's really a challenge because if you have ever dealt with the city or having your water bill get messed up or there's a water line leak or anything like that, people are always very aware of the things that the government does wrong, but they don't really think about the fact that your water came on when you went to brush your teeth this morning, and they don't celebrate us when those things happen. And so, and then we do things like sewer lines, and that's not sexy. Nobody wants to talk about that. And so, we have to be very creative in the way that we reach our audiences, and also be authentic because we do mess up sometimes. And so it's really easy to get out there, and that's why I said I wear a lot of hats, because some days it's like, I'm not going to talk about how great we are because we're a mess today, and we need to fix this problem. And if we fix this problem, then we can talk about how we fix the problem. And people feel like that's more genuine than just what I call propaganda, talking about how great we are when maybe there's a little bit of a glitch in the system. And so for me, it's not only about telling our story and humanizing the people that work at the city, because that's really where the bread and butter is. We have really great people that work with us, and you've got a guy that literally wakes up every morning and thinks about picking up trash. I mean, who wants to do that? Some really awesome person that's out there, and we should celebrate that. And so I not only think that for us, marketing is telling our story, but being authentic in the way that we tell it.
I think for me at Splash Kingdom, it's a little bit different because we are a place that people want to go. I mean, people want to take their kids to the water park, and it's kind of a defined market. Like, we know that we're looking at parents. Our park's kind of small, so parents with small children. I mean, our target might be even a little different than one of the other 4 parks that we have that are larger or in a different location. So for us, it's kind of just figuring out what works in what area that you're actually marketing to. And so we do a lot of social media, and then also just a lot of like boots on the ground, like getting out in the community. And I do a lot of like pop-up ticket sales, and whether or not I sell a lot or what, people have come up to me and said, I didn't even know there was a water park in Nacogdoches if I'm an hour away, hour and a half away. And so they may come up and buy tickets and come here. And then, from a community partner perspective, we love that because it's like we got people to NAC that might not have even been that day, and they came to our park and things like that. And so a lot of it is just figuring out, what works in the different communities that you're marketing to, even though you kind of know like what that target demographic already is.
And mine's a little bit easier being with like a Main Street organization specifically versus, reaching all citizens of a community on every level, because marketing at its core is just making that relationship with your customers. And with Main Street, a lot of our focus is on small business, so it's giving you that personal, reason that you need to come in and shop with that person when maybe you could just buy that product on Amazon anyway. It's a reason that you should come in and you should continue to build that relationship with those customers. And, it's all just in having that human connection, and it gives you that platform to connect with people that other, major corporations might not be able to.
So I think a big part of, and you mentioned just this idea of target marketing, one of the first things that companies have to do is try to understand who their people are. So I guess, can you walk us through some success stories that you've seen, not necessarily in your business? I know many of you have worked with other businesses to make sure they're successful. What are some success stories when it comes to understanding their client base and the social ties that are developed in that?
I think if you're on social media, a big part of it is like keeping track of those analytics, because when you get on there, you look at those reports. I mean, it will tell you women ages 35 to 50 are who are looking at your posts most, and so it is nice to have that like background on there. It's such a benefit of social media versus a lot of traditional in my eyes, just because you can really look on there and see who is using this, who's looking at it, and who's not only seeing it, but who's being engaged, because it'll give you kind of both of those of like, hey, these people are seeing it, but these people are liking it and commenting on it, and that, engagement level and everything.
When it's totally, it can change too. Just because you've got one, product, and maybe the product or the event or experience that you're selling is the same, doesn't mean that the people that are interested in it are always going to be the same. So for a lot of our pages on that Facebook analytics, we can tell that for Main Street, for our shopping district, those are all primarily women. They're women that have money to come out to lunch and to go shopping in the afternoon and do that. And so it'd be normal for us to assume for our farmers market page, since we're all under the same division, that it would be the same and your message is the same. And that's how it was when it started. But I looked at it probably 2 weeks ago, and honestly I hadn't looked at it in probably about 6 months' time. And it was 70% male, which is drastically different than a lot of the numbers that you see on any kind of marketing stuff that are just engaging with it. So, when we figured that out, it was, okay, how do we kind of tailor this stuff now that we know that like we've got something that the men are engaging in? How can you bring in things that benefit for them, or things that maybe they can bring the children to a kids craft or some sort of event to build on to give mom a day away, since we know that they're coming to this stuff. And I really didn't realize, when it had shifted, but it's so important to stay in touch with that, because maybe, there was marketing stuff we were doing that just wasn't hitting that audience that so clearly wanted to see that information.
I think that we sat in the first session to kind of get a feel for it, and I think that we left and we were talking, this is a very different philosophy about how to reach people. And so, you may do target marketing and you may have paid media out there. For the city of Nacogdoches, we're not putting a lot of tax dollars into marketing. Yes, there's a little bit of that to reach audiences, but the real authentic story is what helps us, and it goes a lot farther for our brand. And so I think that it's really important for all of you listening that, you leave these conferences and you're all excited, I'm going to go do all this stuff, that you just kind of have to decide what works for you and not think that you have to be everything to everybody. And I know that goes contrary to what I said, but the city's a little bit different. But, I've seen a lot of small business owners, they say, well, there's this new thing called Snapchat. I guess I have to get on that too. Actually, you don't. Oh, I need a Twitter, I need this, I need that. Okay, Twitter's for famous people and the president. You probably are good. And if you want a place to have really rich content where you're telling a story and you're featuring a lot of information, Facebook's a great place for that. If your audience is on Facebook, then nobody says you have to be on social media. Somebody said once, well, you're young, honey, and you think that that's all that it takes. Well, no, it doesn't. And we have to kind of tell that same story. I might put something on our social media page that also goes to our blog, that also goes on a podcast, that also goes to the newspaper, because the same story, the things that affect the city affect all different audiences. And the people that are reading the newspaper aren't necessarily trolling on social media all day. And so it's really important for you to decide. That's what works for us. Our game is a numbers game. We want to reach the most amount of people with the same key messages over and over and over. But if you're selling a service, personal training, somebody saying, I was trained by this company and this was my experience and here's a quote and here's a picture of me in action, goes a lot farther and feels a lot more genuine than here's an ad for my business with a logo. And so you heard Crystal McWilliams kind of talk about, hey, this is how we do it, and we have our target market, and we hit them with those same ads over and over, and that's one piece of the puzzle. For me, in this school of thought, it's really about building connections and building an audience, because if you go back to the basics, word of mouth is still the most important thing to get your name out there.
I know so much, we talk about that, Facebook or Twitter as us being us, but Instagram is something that if you're selling a product for it, we had a business downtown that they had a Facebook page and it was fine, and they had people, check in and comment or enter giveaways, but she'd never been on Instagram, and she decided she wanted to try it because most of her stuff is home products, and she was very good at setting everything up of how it looked. And so instead of, on Facebook, which you can add the words to, Instagram is a lot more just picture focused, and it's just in how that looks. And so she got on Instagram, and that's been her primary business tool now, that she will link to things because people want to see the picture of how it's going to look, not necessarily read about as much of it. So it's she's got both of them, and they can be both great assets. But when you're saying, find one thing that really works for you, that platform could be different as well.
I guess a follow-up to that, one of the things that we try to attract these customers, but we really try to attract them so that we can build them into loyal fans, or I'm thinking sports, sorry, loyal consumers, right?
They're still fans.
They're still fans, right? But at the end of the day, they're what we call those brand ambassadors. These people who go out on our behalf and tell our story, and that's successful story, just like you're saying. So how do we do that? How do small businesses go from, you're right, finding the right person, having the right mix of whether it be social media or other types of communication, how do we build that brand community?
So with it being communication, communication is a two-way street. You're not just constantly yelling your story or your message out into the world, and then someone, asks you a question or send you a message, and it takes a couple days to get back, or they never hear back from it. And so it's just that, just because you're shouting it on this one way, when they ask something back, it's communication, and the more that they feel that you're building that relationship, it doesn't have to be in person for it to be a personal relationship.
Exactly. We were talking about this before you came in here, and I kind of think the brand ambassador thing can go very organically, or it can be used more as a marketing tool, and either way it's really benefiting your business. But I know for Splash Kingdom, there's one person I can think of in particular that will, if someone says something negative or anything on our comments, this girl will get on there and she'll say something positive about her experience, and it's weekly. And I will comment back and be like, thank you so much, and it's that making sure they know that we're looking at it, we see that they care, and we see that they are giving their positive experiences. It means so much to them, but them doing it means so much to us because it is so genuine that it's coming from, a fan and a person that comes, all the time.
And you said, if you ever see her in the park, they're going to give her a season pass.
Yeah,
for it.
exactly.
So that's just another
She's
thing,
answered some
that
questions
she
that I
can
didn't have to. So
this is amazing. Look at this partnership for it and the rewards that come with it. And so many of our downtown businesses, we've got a private Facebook group just for them to be able to exchange about upcoming events. Because if someone's in there eating lunch, you don't want them to turn around and go back home right afterwards. I want them to say, oh my gosh, y'all got to go pop in and check out this store. Or you're not feeling dessert right now, but you should definitely grab a cup of coffee before you hit the road. There's a super cute coffee shop right over here. And you want that, that for everyone to be an ambassador, not just your consumers, but your partners in all of your business and your stakeholders in your company or in your region or whatever it is.
I also think it's so important to put a face with the name. And so sometimes at the city we deal with, maybe a PR issue, maybe there's some negative press out there. And people really stray away from that, and they think, well, we have to delete all those negative comments, or we can't comment back because you just get into this weird cycle. And I have found that over time, I had to make a believer out of a few of the other folks at City Hall, but they have seen it play out in a really positive way that, number one, if we have a really sensitive issue, we had an issue pop up after the election. There was some political stuff, I won't get into the details of it, but people were very upset with what they thought the city did. And there was a lot of different stories out there, and sometimes we were restrained of what we can say and what we can't say. But I found that figuring out what I could say and then signing my name at the end of it went a long way. Because I was noticing there were people I went to church with. There were people that were going, their kids are in school with my kids, and they're like, I can't believe you, local government, you're the worst. And when I say, hey, it's me, I'm really nice, I promise, it kind of diffused it. Because the keyboard warriors, it is real, and people think that they are invincible because they're behind a screen. And I always use this example: who loves the IRS? Nobody raises their hand. Nobody loves the IRS, but you really can appreciate little Johnny, who has 4 kids and he works for the IRS and he goes to work every day and he's dedicated. And so some of you that sell a service, or you sell something like insurance, that there's a bunch of other insurance agents out there. Well, why do I need to choose you? Well, you may have kids. You may be trying to put somebody through dance lessons. You may be trying to do something, and that's the beauty of small business, is that you have a story to tell. And so telling that story, no one else has it, and that gives you an edge over everybody else.
I'm going to call an audible. Y'all know I'm going to ask this question. But to that point, social media is a big part. Obviously, we've talked about it for a while. Should I monitor my social media page as a business owner? How often should I be looking at it? How do I respond? When do I respond? Can I delete somebody's post? There's lots of questions that are out there how to manage the social media, and I know each of you have experience in doing that. You mentioned it already. What advice do you have?
I think the biggest part is just making sure you are thinking about it as a conversation. I had a colleague tell me one day, she said, if I walked up to you on the street and said hello and you walked away, I would think you were awful. She was like, so I don't want to do that on Facebook either. And I was like, that's such a good point, and something that like we don't think about. And like Amy said, people think, oh, they don't know me, I'm behind a keyboard or whatever. Well, you don't really want them to think that, and you don't want them to think that about you either. You want to make sure that that conversation just keeps going, and there is a point where with negative comments that sometimes it can be too much, but for the most part, you'll get past it.
We will, delete if something's like very crude language or something in there.
Yeah.
Because it is, especially for Wonderland of Lights, which we catch a lot of stuff. If someone has started to drive in and East Texas weather is unpredictable and all of a sudden, it's lightning and thundering, I'm not going to put children out on the ice in the middle of a lightning or a thunderstorm. I know, horrible. But we've had people, that get so mad about it because they started their journey and they didn't check before the time when we make a weather announcement. And you would be amazed at the colorful language that comes out during Christmas time. And so those things we will delete. But some of the other things that are more, I'm upset about this. It's okay to say, we understand, we're upset too. We were so looking forward to a great night. However, tomorrow this, or while you're here, or it's raining, but Longview's got a really amazing drive-through Christmas lights scene. You guys should head over there, here's some directions for it. Instead of just seeing their negative, like, well, we drove 2 hours to get here and, had to check the weather before, and now it's storming and we can't do any of the things. So now we're stuck in a hotel room with nothing to do. You can get on and you can say, we're so sorry, East Texas weather, darn you. You can bring some humor and life to it.
Yeah, and that's another time that just monitoring it sometimes is good enough, because you might have one of those brand ambassadors that's gotten on there and said, hey, I'm so glad you did this because my kid's safe. And,
right.
Things like that. And I know that we have that a lot, and I always that's when you really appreciate it, is whenever they're responding to those comments and you're like, oh, I actually don't have to.
Right.
And then on like the vulgar stuff, I know at the city and then also at Splash Kingdom, we do have
Our bad word list.
our bad word list. And that if it has that, it's just an auto hide. And if any of you don't have that on your Facebook pages, I encourage you to go set it up, because it just will go ahead and just nobody will be able to see it.
It's very easy just in the settings. Even if you don't make your own list, there's like a
You can like Google it.
filter kind of thing.
There's like a bank of bad words, and it's so fun to look at.
Don't write
There
along.
are so many different ways to write one bad word. And I thought I knew them all, but I don't.
When I first worked at the city, I looked through the list and I looked at Amy and I said, did you make this? And she was like, no, we Googled it.
So you Google bad word list for social media, pop it in there, then you don't feel like you have to monitor all the time. And so to kind of also answer your question, because it is so overwhelming and it is so hard to think, I have a business to run. I don't have time to play on Facebook. Like, you young girls are crazy, and that's great for you, but not for me. Well, you kind of have to end that like hamster wheel. And so my advice is, figure out what your messages are. Figure out what 2 stories you want to tell, and then figure out different ways to say them. And I heard some great advice, and we use this. Take an hour out of your week and plan for 2 weeks. Because if you know what you're going to say and when you're going to say it, then you're not worried about that. You can go about your big daily life and run your business and do all the things that you're doing. And if an employee issue pops up or a customer service issue pops up, you're not like, well, Facebook's going to be the first thing that goes. Posting's going to be the first thing that goes, because it's not essential to what's right in front of you. And so if you have your schedule and you plan it out, social media is a beautiful thing. There's ways to automate it. There's ways to schedule ahead of time. And then you really are building yourself time to have a conversation. So if I post something that says, hey, we have this great new business in town, check it out, and I know that that's gonna go out this afternoon, then if I happen to get on in my 5-minute break or whatever, then I can say, if somebody says, well, there's never any new businesses in town, well, I can respond right then, and it takes me 2 minutes instead of taking 5 minutes to find a picture, write the content, post it. Now I'm waiting to see if anybody comments. It just happens a little more organically, and then you have time built in for that two-way conversation. So that's really important to not let it take over, because it's so easy to get that way.
Even just setting out like 10 minutes of your morning. I know usually like I get in my office, I sit down at my desk, and before I return a phone call or anything, I answer Facebook messages. And so if I spend, 5-10 minutes doing that in the morning, and then I'll check it on my phone, on the app, and everything later in the day. But that's like the first time of like, if somebody messaged us between the time I got off at 5 the day before and 8 that morning, I have at least gotten that part covered, which I feel like most of our questions and comments do come in that time frame, just because it's people when they get home and they think, oh, we're gonna go to Watermark tomorrow.
All right, so this is the Governor's Small Business Forum for East Texas. So East Texas, Nacogdoches area, special place to be. It's a great place to build business and build a community of consumers. But what are some of the advantages, the challenges of trying to find your tribe, so to speak, here in the East Texas region? What are small businesses going to face?
I think this is pertinent to East Texas, but it's also pertinent. It's a little bit more global than that. People need to feel empowered. We talk a lot about, I tell people, you live in Nacogdoches too, so instead of lurking and reading the comments, I used to have people come up to my husband and they would go, is that your wife posting? Because we can hear her sass in there, but it doesn't really quite sound like it's a little more. We know what she really wanted to say, but she cleaned it up a little bit, and it's kind of funny, but I say to him, tell them that they need to post too. They know the truth. They know what's going on. If there's some rumors swirling around out there, or you have the opposite experience, empower people. A lot of people don't think that they can do that. And so if you get a customer, and it's a very tangible way, go home today and you get a customer that's really happy with something that you did, say, hey, will you write a review, or will you just send that to me in an email and use that later as a quote from a customer? And you can really capitalize on what you have organically instead of trying to create a bunch of ads and try to figure out what graphics to use and all of this. Like, just being yourself and empowering your current customers to celebrate you and say, hey, you really helped me today. And tell your story. You helped us pay the light bill. You helped us pay our employees. We have 15 employees, and your business helped us keep that going. Tell us why that mattered to you, and have them tell you, and now you have something that has empowered them to tell your story. And then hopefully they will feel that when somebody says, hey, my air conditioner went out, or hey, my gym closed and I need a new place to work out, or oh, I'm looking for insurance rates or whatever, and then somebody goes, well, I know a great guy and he is going to help you, and here's his name. And that still carries a lot of weight in our society.
Cool.
Oh, we're so good. They don't
Yeah. All right. So one of the purposes of this session is to be timely, relevant, and more importantly, actionable, meaning people want to have takeaways. So what are some actionable takeaways that small businesses in the room, organizations in the room can take away about building a loyal fan base? What can they do today that will help them find their tribe tomorrow?
We kind of talked about this when we were, sitting down, and someone else actually brought it up, that it's so easy to just kind of fly by the seat of your pants when you get an idea for something and you just go for it. That we've kind of stopped writing things down on our own plan. And so I do think that it's so important to have that written down somewhere so that you can hold yourself to it, you know what is coming up and how to do it. There's so many things that go into running your own business, or being a part of a business, and a lot of times that's something that we forget to do. We had a business open up downtown recently, and they, got all their paperwork stuff, they did all the things, they had a really great opening weekend, but they had any sort of social media or marketing plan of any kind or any presence. So they opened, and then if someone goes to tell them about it, you can't even try and find him somewhere else. And they came in, they've been open probably a month and a half before she came in, and was like, I don't know what I'm doing. We had a great first weekend, but the only people that come in are people that just happen to walk by and pop in. And then I looked at it, and she had no presence anywhere else other than a physical storefront. So that's something that, to be present on those things and to stay
in contact with that, and it's just to add it into one of your plans. There's so many things that you're thinking about when you've got your own, that definitely has to be, at a forefront.
A big thing for me is just an actionable takeaway, I would say, is to set that little bit of time outside of your schedule to be engaged, like to be answering those questions. I think that's just such an important part of it, and that would be like what I would say. If you have, make your plan. And it just makes your life easier too when you know. I know when I worked for the city, we had a very set plan of like this is the type of content, and you can plug more stuff in, and you can add things as things come up. But it is nice to have that basis of knowing that you're going to meet our employee Monday, and go, things like that, go from there. So that's really helpful. And then just going back in and just monitoring that stuff and making sure people know that you're listening.
Training your people. So for us, we have these awesome people that work for the city, truly the greatest people, and they work so hard, and they think, well, nobody's interested in what I'm doing. They think nobody really wants to know that I fixed this sewer line. That doesn't sound fun. And so, you can only make the I'm number one and the number two business joke so many times until people don't want to hear that anymore. And so, okay, how do we keep telling the same story? Hey, we fixed your sewer lines. Go us. Well, who's doing that? What time did they start? Oh, they were out there at 3 in the morning trying to fix this problem for me? Wow, that's so awesome. And so a huge part of what I do is create relationships with those folks that are doing that work and saying, hey, send me a text message when you do something cool. So this starts out a little bumpy for me. One of our guys who sent me a text message, one dude's smoking and leaning on a shovel, and I was like, okay, well, that's not gonna work. Can you send me something else? And he's like, well, I'll try. And so as we go on, we get there. Now they're excited because they know, oh, my aunt's gonna see this on social media, and they become proud of what they're doing. And so it's been cool. Now last week I got look what we did. We fixed this drain hole thingy, and I was like, oh, great. Can you give me a picture of people? I don't care about that drain hole thingy. And I'm not a technical term writer, by the way. We don't call it. So whatever that thing is. Well, somebody tripped on it last week, and we went out and fixed it. Okay, can you take a picture of you fixing it? Oh, okay, I get it. So next week, okay, got a picture, great. Posted it. My aunt saw that picture. My cousin saw that picture. And that's so great. And then there's a lot of empowerment that your own employees take pride because they know you're celebrating. And so a little bit of that goes a really, really long way.
Yeah, it helps so much with employee morale, just having some of that stuff out there. And then like we've been saying, people appreciate it. They appreciate knowing your story and knowing who works for you. And when we first started posting stuff like that, it was just people will comment and they're like, thank you so much. And how awesome is that they are hearing that thank you for picking up the trash or driving the brush truck or any of that stuff. It's really awesome. And I know for us, we just had a really great evaluation on our lifeguards yesterday, so we're going to post that. And so our lifeguards feel good that they got an exceeds on their audit, which was super hard to get. And people appreciate seeing that too from our end, because we post that and our lifeguards are like, this is awesome, my mom can see it. And then also somebody that's coming to the park sees and they're like, oh, your lifeguards are really good, and I'm really glad to hear that we're not the only ones that think that.
Well, I think not even only your employees, but we've done before for, volunteers or even just friends of mine that, during Wonderland. So we'll do a social media takeover, and I've got a friend that's a really great photographer, and so she'll go and she'll take pictures of her daughter, and she'll do a Wonderland through her eyes. So it's not me taking a picture being like, hey, remember to buy your tickets online and skip the line here. It's pictures, that she's taken of her child running up to meet Santa, or her view, from on someone's shoulders looking up at the courthouse all lit up. So, that makes your employees feel great, but then, with those things, but you can also make your people, ambassadors for it, and your visitors or other people that you work with, can get to sort of be the face of things as well. It doesn't always just have to be, here's what I did or here's what we did through this. It is so much more about whatever connection, because you are a small business. And the great thing about those is the relationship. That's what it's all about. You don't get that through Amazon. Maybe you can get it through Etsy, but not Amazon. It's the same sort of thing. You know who you're getting from.
Yeah, and also with with that is I love to monitor our Instagram of who's using our hashtag and who's checking in at our geolocation, And you can message those people and say, hey, I love your photo, can I share it and give you photo credit? And they 95 to 99% of the time are going to say yes, because, oh my gosh, you liked my photo enough to want to share it. And so that's really validating for them, that not only are they giving their good experiences, they're posting that photo, but you want to share it and you like it. And so that's, number one, an awesome way to build that relationship. Number two, you just got content that you didn't have to go take. And, you know, number three, it's just great to like tie that in. It just builds that engagement level even more.
Also, I think, show me your hands, who's using Facebook? Okay, so that's everybody. And all your competitors are using it, and that's great. So what do you do tomorrow? Knuckle Sandwich, we create an event, and we're gonna give you a free drink with every sandwich purchase. It goes out on an event, not on your page, and that is a whole different group of people. If Amy Mahaffey sees that and I say, I'm going, all my friends are gonna see that I'm going. And it helps get that name out there and get around all of the weird rules that Facebook has about who sees what and when. And then the other thing is your stories. Everybody see those little bubbles at the top? I'll never forget my mom called. She's like, there's these bubbles on top of my Facebook page. Make them go away. And I was like, no, Mom, those are stories. Dude, that's like a raw look at what's happening. Our society is filled with messages. I saw a thing the other day. We see over 5,000 messages before lunch in our day-to-day life, whether that's driving to work, on our phones, wherever. And so how do you cut through the noise? Give people a real look at what's going on. And it doesn't have to be fancy. You can get out and say, hey, this is Amy Mahaffey here, and we're downtown, and we're having a great day, and look at all these cool stores, and it can be 5 minutes. Well, guess what? That goes to the top of everybody's feed. And somebody may click that before they scroll down. And so that's kind of the way that the trend is going, is to be really raw and really authentic and not fancy, no filter, no caption, fancy written. If I slip up and say, you know, something wrong or I misspeak, I just say, oh, I didn't mean it like that, and I clarify, because people want to feel like they're sitting next to you in your office chatting, not that you're trying to throw messages at them.
Yeah. I love the events too, because it'll come up and say things like, you know, Amy Mahaffey, Rachel Stronick, and 3 other people are interested in an event near you next week, and I click on them all the time if it's like people that like to go to the same things as me. And then, you know, and then also another good thing is once people have said interested in that event, then when you post in there, they get an instant notification versus just you posting again on your wall about it. And so I use events a lot.
And you know, if you're a member of, you know, a chamber of commerce or a downtown business organization or anything like that, if it's okay with them, like you can have the opportunity to add them as a co-host on it. So if a downtown business, you know, is doing a wine tasting on a Saturday, I'll just add ourselves as a co-host so that it also is showing up on the Marshall Main Street page. And then you're seeing that information in my own feed and whenever people interact with it, but also in theirs. Or, you know, through a chamber of commerce, you can submit it. Maybe they've got an online calendar. Maybe that's the way they like to do it. But the more places that you can give someone that opportunity to see it, any event really happening in Marshall, if it's downtown, goes on the Main Street page. If it's within city limits, goes on the Visit Marshall, Texas page. So that I don't have to be knowing, you know, that there's going to be a wine tasting at Pietro's and find it through their stuff. I can see it just when I'm coming to the Visit Marshall page. Oh, what should I do this weekend? It's right there. I don't know what business exists, but it's told me what to go and do.
It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be an event to make an event. So wear your I voted sticker and come get a high five from our servers at Knuckle Sandwich. Okay, that sounds silly, but it sensationalizes what you're going to do anyway, and it makes people think, well, I went and voted. Oh, I want to go eat a sandwich. Okay, that sounds cool. Like, I want a high five. Great. Or whatever the thing is that works for you. And so it doesn't have to be super labor intensive. It doesn't have to be a big expense on your part. It can just be something that you're going to do anyway, that you call it an event, because who's going to stop you?
A call to action instead of just like yelling something out to the message out.
So resources is a question that often gets asked. I mean, in our opening session, resources were presented. What resources do small businesses have in communities like Marshall and Nacogdoches, but in East Texas? What can small businesses do to tap into, try to help build their business and their marketing?
I think networking is so important in this sense. I know there's so many, you know, Chamber of Commerce is awesome, organizations like Main Street are awesome, and at the same time, it's just so important your own, I don't know, tribe of people that are your colleagues that you can call and say, hey, this is happening on our Facebook and I really don't know what to say, or I really don't know what to do, or, you know, have you heard of this new thing? Is it even something I should get into? And just having some people that are close to you that are like in a similar industry that can give that advice is so important to me.
And I mean, in your area, I'm sure there's someone that, you know, is being very vocal in life and online about different things. We've got someone who just started an ETX Life where she does a blog. And so if I, you know, had leftovers from a giveaway we did, I'll message her and be like, hey, do you want to come and get this? Because I know she's going to take that stuff home and she's going to blog about it and she's going to talk about it. And so, you know, again, it goes in with the networking stuff where you've got those professional organizations, but you've also got influencers, I guess is the technical term, but just people that are out there that are going to share that message for you.
So you've all been a part of either yourself or in your current roles of trying to help start a new business comes to town. You're there as a resource in many ways. What advice would you give to small businesses? What do you tell them when they come in and say, I want to open a business in this location? What's one of the things, the keys to success, so to speak, for East Texas and your area?
For us, it's like having a plan and really having thought out everything, because again, it just kind of goes back to, you know, the one business that didn't have any sort of plan other than I'm going to put this here and I'm going to open my door and we're going to see what happens. And then we've got one right across the street that's, you know, constantly producing new content, and before they opened, they did like a month out a reveal of like a guess what's coming and getting involved with different things, and just, you know, writing things down, having that plan for it. I don't know. I just still don't get how you can open a business without having that stuff planned out. So we're kind of doing some backtracking to help her get back up on her feet, and she has had more success recently because she's realized that that was something that, you know, just was overlooked.
Yeah, I think also, you know, kind of not being afraid to like change it if what you're doing is not working, things like that, just being aware of it, monitoring things, and that like your marketing strategy is not going to be the same as a different business, because I mean, with us, we're open 94 days is our whole season, and so our marketing strategy is going to be completely different because we are targeting everything to try to get people to come during those 94 days, and then the off season you're trying to get top of mind awareness of like, hey, I should go ahead and buy my season pass, I should do this. And so our strategies change. I mean, our year's kind of in thirds. Honestly, there's like fall, winter that people are like, oh yeah, I should buy a season pass, we're having good sales, but I don't know, we'll think about it. And then spring where people go, oh yes, we're going to want to go to the water park. And then there's summer that you're just like trying to get people in there, and so you're kind of combining all of it. And so it is like you do have to use different strategies, and don't be afraid to do that. Just because it worked at one part of your season, at one part of your year, and for one event, it might be different. And so, you know, you just may have to alter that, and that is totally okay.
And like, just don't suck. I mean, if you have hair nobody wants, you can market it all day long, and nobody wants to buy it. If you're the only hot dog stand in town, you don't have to have very good hot dogs. And so, if you are trying to open a restaurant, Gall's Cafe downtown, we should all go there before you leave town today. It's a great example. They are very intense about their image. And it's not extra. I think a lot of people think, that's extra. I need to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And unfortunately, we live in a world where it takes everything. You can have a great product and not market it, and it's not going to go anywhere. And so first impressions are really important. If you're opening a business, make sure that you have all the kinks worked out. The cafe, they trained for 3 weeks before on the perfect cappuccino and how to measure the coffee and all this stuff, because I'm a coffee snob, and if I go in and it's not the perfect cappuccino, I'm going to turn my nose up at it and want what I make at home. And so that sounds really bougie and silly, but people care about first impressions. And so if you go that extra step and you take care of a client, or you write a handwritten thank you note, or you call them when you don't need something and say, hey, just wanted to check in on you and say hello, those things go a really, really long way. And so if you don't take the time to make sure that you are being genuine, then it doesn't matter how great of a marketing. You could have $1 million and nobody wants to deal with you because you're rude. Or, you know, if you've walked into a store and someone's been rude to you, you don't go back. And so those first impressions mean a lot, and just being a nice human goes a really long way, because you can't peddle. At the city, sometimes I'm like, I can't keep telling people how great we are if we're not going to answer the phone and we're going to be rude to people. So we need to fix this problem. And so a lot of it is, and I made that up. I'm not, that never happens at City Hall. But you know, if you are grumpy on the phone when the first person that you reach at City Hall, or we send you, I had one of our food truck owners yesterday who texted me, and he was in another community and he was trying to get his information, and he said, I was going up the stairs and down the stairs, and I was running all over this place trying to find an answer, and nobody knew what was going on, and it's for something that's happening this weekend. So thank you for streamlining the process when we walk in the door. And so making sure that, hey, if a citizen comes in the door and they want to find something, don't just point them down the hallway. Walk with them, show them who they're looking for, and let's be kind, and that will go a long way. And then if you mess up or you do something wrong, which is going to happen, people will forgive you because they trust you and they see that there's a whole lot more good than there is bad.
All right, so we're to that point where we'll take some questions from the audience. What's on your mind? What questions came to mind as we were going through our discussion?
Nothing.
You guys did it all. You solved all their problems.